Hey, broken salespeople. So today I'm going to talk about our own emotions and how they are actually hurting us in our deals. That's this episode of the Broken Salespeople podcast. Hey, broken salespeople. Welcome to the workshop. My name is Red Staffstrom, and today we're here to help you fix your broken sales skills. So, almost everybody I met in almost every corner of the world likes to think they are logical. But as human beings, we aren't. And we talk a lot about how the customer is emotional, how we need to talk about emotions to the customer, and we need to understand what they're going through. But we never talk about reflecting that into ourselves. We have a lot of understanding the customer, being empathetic, talking to them, but we don't extend that courtesy to ourselves. And we can tell that based on our management styles. The way we manage isn't based on emotions. We're typically managing based on KPIs, based on numbers. I talked about this in a different podcast episode. Those are two completely different sections of the brain. The emotional part of the brain is the neocortex right in the middle, and then the logical part of the brain is the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe on the outside of the brain. Now, in order to make any decision, any action, it has to flow through our brain stem. So, in order to make any decision, it has to go through the emotional part of our brain. So, we may create something that's logical, but it still has to be filtered through our emotions. Everything we do is emotional, period. And that doesn't just pertain to customers, it pertains to us. But we don't talk about us and our emotional journey and our emotional difficulties that we have a lot. Um, what I'm going to bring up really quick, just on the screen, is an emotion wheel. This you could find anywhere. So if you're listening to this as a podcast and not watching it on YouTube, you could find this anywhere. On the emotion wheel, it shows pretty much any emotion you have. On the top half of the circle is peace, joy, and love, and it's broken down into subcategories. And then on the bottom half of the wheel is fear, sadness, and anger, positive emotions versus negative emotions. Evolutionarily speaking, all human beings are negative. The majority of our thoughts are negative because that was our survival. That was how we survived. The people who were overly optimistic didn't survive as long as those of us who were naturally cautious. You see a cave, you can think, "Hey, that's a great place to sleep," or "Hey, maybe there's a tiger living in there." Who do you think the person who's going to live longer is going to be? They may be right 9 times out of 10, but you only need to be wrong once. So that's the whole idea behind it, is the majority of emotions we feel, our customers feel, everyone feels tends to be negative because that was the evolutionary imperative that we have. But we don't talk about our own anger. We don't talk about our resentment, our sadness, our fear, our anything on this lower half of the wheel in the blues, purples, and reds, where there are things like humiliation, exhaustion, frustration, doubt, being stifled, being stuck, being intimidated, all of those different things that we do feel on a constant basis. Um, think about how many sales development reps are intimidated by picking up the phone sometimes, and they'd rather just send an email. Okay, I understand that, but that intimidation, that fear of being yelled at may be holding you back. But we kind of talk about that on a customer level more often. It's the customer's fear, it's the customer's anxiety, their fear of change that usually prevents the deal from happening, not our own. So we need to start adjusting the way that we talk about emotions within our sales organizations. We need to start embracing our own emotions, talking about where we have hangups, and for a couple of reasons. One is we need to do this because it's a training exercise. The better we are about talking about our own emotions, talking about our own fears, sadnesses, and anger, and we talk more about those negative emotions that we feel on a daily basis, the better we're going to be able to talk to our clients about that. Also, considerably, it helps retention so much more. When people feel like they are understood, when they feel like they are seen, by their managers, they're way more likely to stay. The average sales development rep only stays, the average tenure of an SDR is only 18 months at any particular job. We keep turning people over because they're not feeling wanted, because they feel like disposable assets, because all we talk about is numbers. We talk about how many phone calls they have to make for a day, and almost anyone can fill that seat as long as they're making X number of phone calls. That SDR doesn't feel valued because they're literally a statistic. But by embracing the emotions, embracing where a person is happy or fearful or wherever they are on the spectrum that particular day, we could actually make them feel more comfortable within the office. At the same time, giving them the skills they need to relate to customers. So we need to start talking about emotions within our sales meeting. When if you are a sales manager, you cannot simply ask how are you doing like a greeting. I know that's very common here in America like, "Hey, how's it going?" "Oh, good. Going great. Going awesome." But it's just a platitude. It's just a call and response. You need to really dive in and ask how they are doing. Where are their problems? What's good? What's bad? What do they like? What do they hate? Embrace both the sucky and the great emotions that they are having because their clients are going through the same thing. And if they cannot feel and those emotions, if they are stifling those down, it's very likely that their customers are as well too. By being open, by being willing to talk about your emotions, you are way more likely to get somebody else to open up, to talk about where they're fearful, what's holding them back. But if you're only talking about numbers, they're not going to. We've talked about forever that all decisions are emotional. The decision to stay with your company, stay with your organization is emotional as well too. And by not giving that emotional support that your sales reps need, you're holding them back. I recently read a phenomenal book by Susan Cain. I'm a huge fan of hers. She is like one of those people, like if you could have lunch with anybody, she's one of my people. In her book, Bittersweet, one of the things she explains so well, and I never thought about it, is the biological, the sociological, and the evolutionary reason for depression. See, particularly here in Western culture, we are against negative emotions. We want people to be positive 100% of the time. The problem is when you have that, when you have people who are unable to feel that sadness, they are also unable to feel that empathy. If I'm in a depressed and anxious mood, I don't want to talk to somebody who is overly positive, who is happy and bubbly, because it feels like a disconnect. We're going at different wavelengths. I want somebody who understands where I am, what I'm going through. And so by having somebody who, even if they aren't depressed, at least understands depression, I could have a much more meaningful conversation as opposed to having to pretend I'm something I'm not. So by talking to your sales reps about their frustrations, their sadnesses, their personal lives, you can actually help them become better at talking to customers about their problems, building deeper relationships. We talk about building deeper relationships all the time, but very few of us talk about how to do it. You need to dive into the emotions. Building a deeper relationship is not just talking about things we like to do and, oh, you like to go fishing too? It doesn't work that way. The way you build a deep relationship is by getting people to open up, to dive deeper into what they're feeling and to talk about it in a much more detailed way. Excuse me. Without that deeper dive, without being able to show that empathy, a relationship can't really develop. Without showing that emotional intelligence, we can't build those deep relationships that we all purport to want to have with our clients. Instead, we keep things superficial and talk about statistics the same way we talk about what's the temperature out today? What was the score of the game? You notice how those superficial conversations tend to tie around mathematics and statistics? It's because we're not having those real conversations. And if you're a sales manager and you're keeping things focused on KPIs, you're probably not going to keep your people very long because you are literally making them feel like a statistic rather than a human being. So I hope this helps. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Please take the time to like, subscribe. I'm going to be popping some links on the screen right now. If you are listening to it as a podcast, take the time to review. It really helps the channel out. And until next time, please go fix yourself.